Hello, my name is Eileen DiCenzo, and I've had the pleasure of working with securities registered and insurance licensed advisors for over 20 years. As Chief Compliance Officer for a mutual fund dealership and at one of Canada's largest MGAs, I have experienced the frustration you sometimes feel when faced with legislation and regulations and the requirement to incorporate those rules into your daily practice. Let's review those requirements to ensure you have incorporated them into your practice operations. In Part 1, we're going to look at the activities themselves and why there is a need for you to be the front line against them. We will look at who the players are in this industry of money laundering and terrorist financing, and who is responsible for which aspects and what those responsibilities are. In Part 2, we'll talk about the compliance regime. There is a lot of material in both sections to be covered, so be prepared. In Canada, the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Financing Act governs money laundering and terrorist activities. This act applies to financial services providers and other persons engaged in businesses, professions, or activities that are susceptible to being used for money laundering and the financing of terrorist activities. The Act responds to the threat from organized crime by providing law enforcement officials with the information they need to investigate and prosecute money laundering or terrorist financing offenses. The Act also ensures appropriate safeguards are put in place to protect the privacy of persons with respect to personal information, and assists in fulfilling Canada's international commitments to participate in the fight against transnational crime, particularly money laundering and the fight against terrorist activities. There are three objectives of the Act. The first is to implement specific measures to detect and deter money laundering and the financing of terrorist activities, and to facilitate the investigation or prosecution of money laundering and terrorist financing offenses. The second is to respond to the threat posed by organized crime by providing law enforcement with the information they need, and finally, to help fulfill Canada's international commitments to fight multinational crime. These measures contribute to the integrity of Canada's financial infrastructure. They also represent sound business practices for reporting entities, and that's you, to help you minimize your risk of being exposed to money laundering or terrorist financing activities.